I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining us for our conversation on the Great Lakes, farming, and water use. If you are following us online right now, you can join the conversation and ask some questions just like our studio audience did. Just go to Facebook and Twitter and find us at Great Lakes Now. The question of water usage, just how much can be taken from the Great Lakes, is especially relevant to our conversation. The largest use of water comes from agriculture, and it's important to take a look at the Great Lakes Compact, which governs water use. Joining me to explore that now is David Lusch. He's the Senior Research Specialist at Michigan State University. David, thanks so much for joining me, and I would have never known that you were at Michigan State.
Yeah, I tried to hide it.
All right, let's get started with our conversation. Before we delve into the Great Lakes Compact, I want to take a step back and talk about agriculture as a whole in the Great Lakes Basin. Do you think people in the general public realize how important agriculture is to our area when we think so much about manufacturing?
I think not. In my own classes, for instance, 30 years ago when I asked students how many of you either grew up on a farm or have family members that are on the farm, about a third of them. Today I ask no one. So there's been this disconnect with rural America. Most of our people are in the urban areas, and therefore they don't really understand the economic driver that agriculture is. And I would say certainly in Michigan, but probably throughout the upper Midwest region, agriculture is number one in terms of the throughput in the economy, followed by manufacturing, actually followed by tourism in Michigan, and then manufacturing.
All right, so let's take a look about water usage in agriculture, and I think a shift turning more toward irrigated farming. Explain that and what we're seeing now.
A lot of people living in the Great Lakes area in the midst of 20% of the fresh water on the planet say, why are we irrigating? What's the point of that? And they miss the point that while we have adequate rainfall from an annual perspective, 34 inches here in southeast Michigan as an example, it comes at the wrong time of the year. We do not have adequate moisture during the growing season. And as climate change comes over us, we're seeing a partitioning of the same amount of precipitation per year, but coming earlier in the spring and not as much in the growing season.
So they're trying to adjust for that.
So farming is all about risk management. Putting in an irrigation system is just one more layer of risk management for the farm manager.
So what's the problem with that then?
The use of the water. And recently, under this thing called we call it the Great Lakes Compact. Its formal name is the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin Water Resources Compact.
Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way
so,
right there.
I just wanted to put the right name, but we all just call it the Compact. And what's the Compact? The Compact is a legal structure. It's a contract among the 8 U.S. states in the Great Lakes Basin that says, challenges all of us to manage water better. And the whole purpose of that, or the underlying purpose of that, was to prevent diversions of our water to other places outside the basin. We understood from legal opinions that in order to do that, we had to defend against the Commerce Clause in the Constitution, which basically said you can't apply a higher standard to outsiders than you apply to yourself. So everyone was in favor, not everyone, a vast majority of our citizenry was in favor of no diversions, but that put on us a responsibility to manage the water better. One of the outcomes of that in Michigan was the creation of our signing up for the compact, which occurred back in '08, and it said we have to learn to manage water better. We took a very creative, in fact unique in the nation, approach to doing that, which said we're going to try to figure out how much water does Mother Nature need for all the various services, and then allocate whatever is left over to human use. This is the first time in modern water management history, certainly in Michigan, but I think throughout the country, where Mother Nature had an equal standing with human use.
So are we managing it effectively?
I think we are. More could be done, obviously. We could be more intensive about it. There's a huge argument now whether we're trading food for fish. They say that because we use as the canary in the bird cage in the water management program in Michigan, fish populations in streams as an indicator of what kind of an ecological system that stream represents, and then we base our human use allocation for that stream watershed on that.
So down the road, more irrigated farming, is there any kind of economic or environmental impact should we be taking more and more water out of the Great Lakes for this kind of agriculture?
One of the things we're trying to do is prevent this specter of diversion. We have to do that by having a higher intensity management of ourselves. part of that comes from conservation. In fact, the whole central focus of the compact is water conservation. It's not that we're running out of water in terms of the surface water, but we are running out of water in certain places in Michigan, a strange idea, because we sit in a water abundant area where in fact water is not as available as it once was, or it's becoming less so. And that's a big problem, especially at the same time that we're trying to improve or increase the economic driver that agriculture is.
So do you think that somewhere down the road, are we going to run into a problem?
I think a lot of people aren't used to the concept of what sustainability means, and sustainability means that there is a limit, an economic limit, things are too costly to do, or an environmental limit. And that's the system that we're trying to put in place here in Michigan, thinking about sustainability. And sustainability certainly puts constraints on activities. You don't get to do everything you want everywhere all the time. You have to have limits.
Bottom line, do you think that there is more of a public awareness of water usage in the Great Lakes Basin as it pertains to agriculture and in how that can impact us?
I think there's an overall increase in the awareness of things Great Lake and surface waters. The missing component is that most of irrigated agriculture is drawing from groundwater, and there's very little knowledge about our groundwater resources in the general public.
What do you think we need to do to educate people more?
Well, one thing that would be handy is to teach some of these principles in grade schools and high schools, and right now it's sort of left, it's the unseen resource, we say. It's hard to have a show and tell about groundwater because it's under the ground, right? But we do have these wonderful desktop models, physical models, that you can see how groundwater works, and I wish more science teachers, especially in the middle school, high school level, took advantage of those sorts of things to teach that. While most people in Michigan drink surface water because of the large municipal water supplies, most places in Michigan are totally dependent on groundwater for our drinking water. So we put the human part in there as well, and almost all of irrigated agriculture is now dependent on groundwater resources.
I have to start educating that next generation. David
Absolutely.
Lusch, thanks so much for joining me. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.